Hi guys, this is Chrystal Lynn, and I have something I'm going to do a little different today. How many of you out there right now are completely obsessed with the Jodi Aries case? We know that she is at the moment that we speak waiting to find out if she's actually going to receive the death penalty or a life in prison for killing her lover, Travis Alexander. They met in June of 2006 and began behind the scenes. Well, it started out in front. Well, you have to take a look here that they met. Both of them were in the sales business. They met doing prepaid legal. He was a star. He was a motivational speaker, and she was absolutely mesmerized by him. And so this relationship began. Now, I'm going to be doing what's called an astrological profile. I'm going to try to do this in 15 minutes. Now, anybody that knows about studying somebody's birth chart knows it can take many hours to dive into it. So I'm only going to be highlighting certain things. For those of you who've never heard of astrology or how this can apply to our life today, astrology is an ancient scientific art of learning how to read what was happening the moment that you were born in the universe, and does it truly connect to us? When you begin to unfold your own birth chart, the truths that start to come out are so amazing that you can't not take a second look. There's something to this. And so as I begin to open up the chart of Jodi Aries, I am blown away at how uncanny the truth is revealing itself. When we're watching this case, we're seeing all of the media get on and want to psychoanalyze her. Well, she is quite interesting behind the scenes in her birth chart. I have many pages here, so I'm going to try to get going. So again, like I said, it's believed that the moment you were born, you actually have a fingerprint in the sky. Nobody can repeat that. Each second that happens, planetary movement is also happening. The moment that you were born, there was an embodiment of energies going on based on certain planets. We have our sun signs, our moon signs, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. What was going on with them? They give us a direct influence to our personality. Of course, this does not discount genetics and how we were raised. All of those things play factor here. But this is believed that this is the base level of how we think, that we all think differently, and subconscious thoughts that come up in our lives that we all have to work through. And so when I look and unfold the story of Jodi Aries astrologically, she had a lot of demons that she was working through, a lot of tough things, and I will be talking about them this time. We also have to take the look at the fact that once you find out what these basic planets were doing when you were born, then we start to find out how they were crossing one another, creating an aspect. And those aspects can create different levels of energy. Some can be very stressful energy, which we call a square, or there could be a trine, an aspect going on that's a trine, which could be harmonious. And so these also influence us, embedding in us different thoughts and our subconscious and our personality. And so when you start to unfold these birth charts, it's really exciting. Now, had Jodi and Travis come to me personally as my clients asking me to take a look at their relationship, I have to admit the red flags would have been going. And there was things written about them, again, before this case ever came to the surface. So let's find out what they are. First of all, we find out that Jodi Aries is a Taurus Ascendant. That is her outer persona. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, so we see, her need to want to put that makeup on, to look good. We also see that she is able to sing. That's a Venus-ruled characteristic. And she, cares about how she looks. And she's, pretty earthy. She likes to travel, or she likes to go out and hike, and all of those different things. So she's interested in a lot of different things. It's interesting, in one of the interviews that I watched, that they asked the police officer when he went to arrest her, was she concerned about it? Was she concerned about being arrested? And he said all she wanted to know is if she could get her purse and put makeup on for the picture she was going to have to take of her mugshot. So here we go. We see that personality play out, caring about what she looks like. We also see that her sun was in Cancer. This is a very emotional placement because it's ruled by the moon, and the moon is influencing this person. It can be very intuitive people, very emotional people, and very romantic delusions is very possible here. They care about family and home. They want to be a mother. They want to be a wife. She wanted those things desperately. And you see that she was willing to do anything. She wanted to be Travis's wife. She also converted to Mormonism to please him and to show that she could be that person for him. She was willing to do anything. We also see that the moon was in Gemini when she was born. And so when you see the moon sign that each person has, this is actually more powerful than the sun sign. You know, this isn't about astrology that's on the back of magazines, guys, that you look at and you look at your sun sign. When you do a natal birth chart, you are surgically opening so many different aspects. The sun sign really isn't the prominent characteristic in her life. It's only one of many. So here, the moon was in Gemini. And that creates, really interestingly, in her, it created that ability to be different people. We see that the moon, we see that Gemini is the twins, and a lot of times you see that fight between good and evil. And I even saw in some of the interviews that they actually thought that she might have multiple personalities. Well, you know, that's that committee. There's different voices going on in the head when you do experience that influence from Gemini, and we see that play out here. We also see, I thought it was really interesting because she has a tendency here to analyze and can give the appearance of emotional detachment. And we also see that she likes to talk about feelings, but actually feeling the feelings is very difficult for her. And that is a Gemini moon trait, or moon in Gemini trait. And so we see that play out in her personality. A lot of people thought she was detached. And the interesting thing here is the sun in Cancer does make her quite emotional. So you do see this playing out, this superficiality to this deep emotion. And the next thing I'm going to talk about quickly is this Mercury. Mercury is your planet of communication, and her Mercury was in Cancer. Now, when we see this, this makes for amazing novelists, romantic novelists. And it's really interesting as I watched her interviews. It's like she saw her life as this tragic romantic movie playing out. She was just absolutely enthralled with the idealism of this romantic, as if she'd watched many of her own, you know, stories of these things playing out and being almost attracted to them. We also see that Venus was in Gemini. That's her love sign, and that makes for somebody that likes lots of different things, lots of change in partners, and yet she did get obsessed with this man. So what was going on? We also see that Mars was in Virgo when she was born, and that's where we see the photography, the journalism, her writing out her life story. Virgos are very analytical. They love to document and journal, and they're very strategic. And so here we see she was an artist, and she also was a photographer. So we see these things really playing out in her. Now, I want to talk about some of the aspects in her life. And again, this is when you start taking the planets and crossing them and finding out what kind of energies were brewing under the surface. Well, in Jodi's chart, Venus was squared Saturn. And like I said at the beginning, square is not usually good. It creates heavy tension. In her, it created an unhealthy sensuality, frightened to show love, problems potentially with her mother. All her relationships led to disappointment, and she had a very suspicious nature, jealousy. We also see that Venus was opposing Neptune in her chart, and this really creates for these clingy relationships. She almost had a fog of delusion over her. Neptune can represent delusion. Neptune is a very spiritual planet, and a lot of times when you see Neptune coming into your life, it's like you can almost have delusionary relationships, not seeing what's really there. And that was in opposition to to Venus, her love. And gives her the ability of being in love with love, easily accepted behavior partners that others would not have accepted. And we see that on the jury or on the trial when they asked her, why would you do these things? And one of the comments she made was, it was just so hard to say no to Travis. And that was a struggle that she had here in her birth chart. Over the top in love, romantic dreams, deception in love, we see that all playing out in this relationship. We also see that she had Mercury was square Pluto. And this I have seen play out in a lot of people's lives, and I want to bring note to it. This creates a tendency towards fanaticism and attracting the dark side. And you see this a lot in groupies that follow bands and people who become stalkers, get obsessed, or somebody who follows a cult. So even coming into Mormonism was not hard for her because she has that tendency to want to follow along, and she gets fanatic about what she's doing. Okay, we also see in her chart, and I'm going all over the place, guys, because I only have a few minutes, but we also see that she had Scorpio in the 7th house. In the 7th house, that's represented by partnership. And in the 7th house with Scorpio, we see that obsessive behavior in her partners, controlling and jealous and drunk with love. And when I see her interviews, it's almost like this glaze is over her eyes when she talks about this relationship. Very, very interesting. We also see that she had Pisces in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house represents the prisons, isolation, mental things. And when you see Neptune there, you can have a lot of delusion again. And so she ended up in prison. Now, some people can overcome this house and they end up having where they work in the prison, or maybe they are a social worker for mental health. But she ended up in prison with Pisces in the 12th house. Now, what I want to get to here, and this is kind of an interesting concept. So again, this is all up to you guys to think, use your own tuitions about what I'm talking about. But the other thing we have to look at is what is happening up in the universe today in conjunction and connection with the planetary energies that we all have inside of us, that we all experience. And those are called transits. And when these transits come through, they can affect us differently based on kind of like a magnet, what we have going on inside. And so I really have to make note about what was going on with Jodi Aries in her transits. The first thing I want to take a look at is in 6 of 2007, Travis had Jupiter was conjunct Neptune. And this creates for kind of that rose-colored glasses in love. He was opening up to love. He was kind of delusionary about love. He was feeling good and attracting love. So here comes Jodi Aries. We find out that in February of 2007, the relationship was really getting going, but it was very disturbed. And she, was using all of her controlling powers and very obsessed with him. He was kind of trying to get away from her, and his friends, in one of the interviews, Chris and Sky were very good friends watching this relationship play out. They actually told him, look, we're really worried about this girl. Something's not right. People were starting to feel this. Their own intuitions were feeling this vibration going on. And they told him, they basically gave him an ultimatum and said, look, you got to get rid of this girl. Well, of course, he agreed on the outside, but ended up going more underground with this relationship. But he had, in his transits at that time, Uranus was squared Venus, and that creates for a breakdown in friendships, ultimatums, disturbing time, very emotional, reevaluating love. So we see in February of 2007, he was really starting to see what was going on, but ended up continuing this relationship. So they did have some struggles up till June of 2007, and here we see there was a transit going on. Mars was squaring the sun, and this is very impulsive, aggressive time. It's kind of like you know, a shadowy, a subconscious feeling coming over you that you just know is not you. These transits have a way of imposing some of these dark energies, and we still have free will, guys. And what ends up happening is, you know, during these times we need counseling or we need help or we're not sure what's going on. And so, you know, the saying goes, did the devil make me do it? Well, in some ways it feels like the devil's making you do it. At least in astrology, we find out that these transits can have an effect on our mind and emotions and how we feel. The fact of knowing astrology, kind of like a tool, kind of like what is the astrological weather going to be in my life, by following the transits in your life, you can become more prepared. Jodi was not prepared for this transit that I'm going to talk about that completely engulfed her life and ended up brutally killing a very good man, you know, who also struggled. She was quite the spider. She was quite the obsessor, and it was hard to say no to her. But in February of 2007, and I only went to July of 2008, so that's almost a year and a half. It may have continued on a little further. I did not research that any further. But for that period of time, Jodi had a transit that came into her life. Pluto squared Mars. And anytime I've seen this is just one of the heaviest transits I've ever seen come into someone's life. Some transits, as the universe is shifting, will come and pass through your life in a few days, maybe a week, maybe a month. But when you see Pluto, because he's such a slow-moving planet, he stays in your life for quite a while and can be quite disruptive. And this transit is very disruptive. This transit created in her big bursts of angry energy, uncontrolled behavior, compulsions, obsessions, power struggles, resentments, discovering that how possessive and jealous you truly are. It creates an obsessive urge and expresses attraction to the dark side and sexual taboos. She was very attracted to secrets. And so this was brewing under the surface of her. And as people began to come around her, they all said the same thing. They all said that, you know, there's something wrong here. We can feel this dark feeling. And so this is my astrological take right now on this. I have so much more I could do on it, but I've got to stop somewhere. Travis was a Leo, we do find out, and I'd like to do more on his chart. But just so you guys know, understanding who you are and what you're going through, and if you need help to get it, because we all have struggles and we all go through different things at different times. You know, be aware of what's going on and be aware of the people around you. This is a tragedy. Should not have happened. But we do see that she was in an astrological storm. Thanks, guys.